to honor everyone's time and to make sure that we have enough time to cover everything that Dr. White and I put together, let's go ahead and get started. Let me start off by introducing myself. My name is Patricia Avila, and I'm one of the counselors at Riverside City College. I have been there for close to 25 years, and currently right now my role at the college, I serve two functions. One is I am one of the engagement center coordinators for one of our pathways for the languages, humanities, and social science pathway. And I also serve as the faculty development coordinator. Virginia, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, and my name is Virginia White. I am a professor in the biology department. I'm a botanist by training, and I am the center coordinator for the STEM Engagement Center. I've been at RCC for 15 years in a number of different capacities, but this has been developing of the success teams and the engagement centers has been one of the most rewarding challenges that I have participated in. So.
Okay, so let's go over what we're hoping to accomplish today. If we could go to the next slide, great, fantastic. So we're hoping to provide all of you with a working definition of what a student success team is and what it looks like. We're hoping to also offer you all a rationale for why a student success team is central to the guided pathways work that most, if not all of us, are already embarked on at our institutions. We're going to be sharing some key components for a student success team, and then make some recommendations about things that you might want to consider as you implement your own student success team on your campuses, or as you if you already have a success team, we can definitely give you, hopefully give you some recommendations about some things that you could potentially add to what you're already doing on your campuses. So I don't want to repeat what more than likely you all already know, or perhaps what you've already even been exposed to in some of the other workshops that you've been participating in, but the implementation of guided pathways for us at RCC, you know, when we talked about what did that mean for us as an institution, I mean, the whole purpose behind guided pathways is to streamline a student's journey through college in a way that is structured. We give them a structured choice. We revamp their support. We've revamped their support and provided them, as well as ourselves as a college, clear learning outcomes. And this is really in an attempt to help more students achieve their college completion goals. We know that too many students wander because they come in undecided about what those career goals are. There's lots of choices that can be extremely overwhelming. They're unaware of the elements that they need to consider for a chosen career. And oftentimes there's a disconnect between the curriculum and their career choice. They don't see the alignment between education and what they want to do in the future. So guided pathways, you know, provide students with guided exploration within career and academic communities. It's timely intervention for students who are going off path. And we'll talk a little bit about how our student success teams have really addressed this. It also provides students with engagement both in and outside of the classroom to kind of reinforce their career decision. And also equally important is the creation of, for students, you know, creating a sense of belonging for them, which we know once they feel a sense of belonging and they feel a connection to the institution, they're more likely to move from one semester to the next, right? We're going to retain them at a higher rate. And then, of course, the goal being also being to increase the completion rates. At RCC, we have, we did this several years ago as an entire college community, right? We brought all the faculty and support staff together, and had some really meaningful conversations around what would these pathways need to look like, what made the most sense. And so we came up with 8 instructional pathways. At some of your institutions, these might be called meta majors, or there might be another term that you're using, but for us, we have 8. And so we have structured it in a way where all of our advanced arts and trades are housed in one location for students. Business information systems and technology is in another. We have our education and teacher preparation pathway for students that are interested in those careers. We have health-related sciences, which includes nursing. We have languages and humanities. Then we also have science, technology, engineering, and math, which Virginia represents our STEM pathway. We have social and behavioral sciences, and then last but not least, visual, performing, and creative arts. Okay, so let me go over this particular slide. At RCC, we have 5 collaborative student success teams. So we have 8 instructional pathways, but we have 5 divisions at the institution. So all of these instructional pathways are within those 5 divisions. And so we have the Languages, Humanities, and Social Science division, which houses languages, humanities, and social science pathways. We have obviously the STEM division, which supports the STEM pathway. Our Fine and Performing Arts division obviously is going to be supporting visual, performing, and creative arts. Health-related sciences division, again, supports all of those health-related sciences that we offer in addition to nursing. And then last but not least, our Career and Technical Education division supports our Advanced Technical Arts and Trades pathway, business information, and education and teacher prep.
So Patty's just walked you through our different academic divisions and what each of them, the population of students that each of those academic divisions serves. And so what we did is we built a success team for each of those academic divisions. So again, we had 8 pathways, but those 5 academic divisions. And so there's a success team and an engagement center for each of those 5 academic divisions. Each of the success teams has a faculty coordinator, and we'll talk about the roles of each of these members of the success team in successive slides here. We also have a team of academic counselors that is paired with each of the success teams. We have educational advisors, peer mentors who are students that serve, as mentors to the other students, and then of course, the faculty in those academic divisions. So Patty and I are both faculty coordinators for our respective centers. We schedule all of the events within the engagement center. So we're the ones who set up whatever our workshop availability will be, guest speakers that might come in, any of the activities within the engagement center itself, the sort of, if we were on campus, the campus focus of those engagement centers. While we're in a virtual environment, we're just doing all of those things virtually, but we're still responsible for scheduling all of those things. We coordinate with the ed advisors. When we were on campus, the ed advisors are actually located within the engagement centers. Their work area is within the engagement center. And we'll talk more about their role, but because they're sort of the person in the room at all times, of course, we're faculty, so we're not in the engagement center all the time. We work with that ed advisor to make sure that the center is running efficiently the way that we anticipate it to. We work with the rest of the success team to coordinate outreach. So we identify priority groups, for example. Maybe we want to do some outreach to students who don't have an ed plan yet. So the success team works together to come up with who we're going to reach out to and how that outreach is going to take place, how we're going to actually connect with those students, how frequently we're going to do that. All of that kind of conversation is happening within the success team, but sort of coordinated by that faculty coordinator. And then when COVID happened, we were sort of a little over, well, we were about a year and a half into coming up with what these success teams would be like and how they would work. And we're suddenly challenged with we don't have a place to be anymore. How are we going to facilitate these engagement centers? And so that's when we developed Canvas shells for each of the engagement centers. So each engagement center has a Canvas shell that works just like any other Canvas course. And so for example, all of the students who are identified as STEM students are registered into that STEM engagement center Canvas shell. And that Canvas shell then can become the place where students know to come and get resources and information about STEM related activities. So all of the STEM students are automatically enrolled. Well, it's not automatic. This does involve a lot of people hours, but the student doesn't have to do it themselves. If they are identified as a STEM student, then they get enrolled into that Canvas shell. But all of these are open enrollment Canvas shells. So another student from outside of STEM can come and they can either visit the engagement center shell or they can actually enroll themselves in it. So we know there's a lot of overlap, for example, with the health-related sciences engagement center. So those students, a biology major might be housed in STEM, but they might be interested in some of the events and activities taking place in the health-related sciences engagement center. So they can come, any student can come into and out of any of those shells, but they get sort of pre-enrolled into the shell that matches their academic division. And each division has been utilizing their Canvas shells, in their own unique ways, but we use that as a way to house general information, to house schedule of events. We have links in there, to access Zoom for a workshop or for drop-in hours. And that's how we're trying to manage the space while we're virtual. It's become pretty successful so far, so it's going to continue to exist even when we return to in-person instruction. It's a great tool to have the attention of the students right there in their Canvas accounts. When they log in, they see the engagement center course like any other course that they're enrolled in. And we often use that to manage the communication within the division. The faculty coordinator is responsible for sort of managing that communication out to the student and trying to not duplicate efforts. And so that student who's a biology student, but maybe is interested in the health-related sciences activity, the outreach will come from the STEM engagement center, not both STEM and health-related sciences, so that we don't duplicate efforts and overwhelm the students. But from the student perspective, they can go into any of those engagement centers that they're interested in. Our academic counselors are dedicated within those academic divisions and pathways. We have distributed the counselors amongst the academic divisions based on a caseload model. So depending upon the number of students in a particular pathway, we assign counselors to that pathway. They are doing all kinds of intentional outreach and providing inescapable services. We know about the academic advising that our counselors are providing, but they're also helping our students a lot with career exploration. And as they've become specialized into these academic divisions, they're really connecting with those transfer institutions in really, really productive ways. We have some really good collaboration occurring between our counselors and our transfer institutions, clearing that pathway, smoothing it so that there's no confusion as students are trying to navigate from community college to four-year institution. Our educational advisor, as I said, is a staff member who is housed in the engagement center when we're in person. They provide support. They serve as a resource. Because they're a staff member in the engagement center, they're often that sort of first line of defense, right? When a student comes into the engagement center and has a question, it often gets filtered through the educational advisor first. They can help the student to review ed plans. They can answer questions about academic programs, various pathways. They assist students with registration. They know all about all of the deadlines and timelines and application due dates and all of those sorts of things, and assist students with all of those kinds of navigating those kinds of challenges. Plus, they're also able to help students to schedule appointments with the academic counselors. They can just help them navigate the system to learn how to get in and to find those appointments with an academic counselor. And then they also supervise the peer mentors. So the educational advisors sort of, they host meetings with the peer mentors and coordinate amongst them and supervise them while they're working in the engagement centers. Our peer mentors offer peer-to-peer support and guidance. They are ideally students within the same division, not always within the same pathway. In those divisions where we have multiple pathways, we don't always have a peer mentor from that pathway who can mentor the students, but we try to, as much as possible, have the students paired up with a mentor who's in the same pathway as they are. These students aren't providing information about courses or, which course sequence to take. They're helping the students navigate all the other parts of college. So they're helping to raise awareness about various resources that are on campus, encouraging them to take advantage of tutorial services or supplemental instruction or any of those other kinds of supports that are available on campus. They promote student engagement, so they advertise events to their students. They encourage them to connect in and to attend events. They encourage participation in the engagement center workshops. And in the STEM engagement center, at least, I can say we utilize our peer mentors to give a lot of our workshops. We're doing one tomorrow, as a matter of fact, where we're talking to our students about how to connect socially to other students, particularly while we're remote, but just in general. And so the peer mentors are going to be providing students with some ideas of how to connect in with other students. And our peer mentors, not just in STEM, but across the board, many of them are hosting game nights or trivia nights, and they're really trying to do that kind of social outreach to our students that we know that they feel like they're lacking, especially in this current remote environment. But you can see this is a photo from when we were on campus. They have vests, so they stand out. So a student can come into the engagement center and engage with one of the peer mentors, and it doesn't have to have been the one they were assigned to. So students are assigned again to a peer mentor, but they can interact with any of the peer mentors. They're identifiable by those vests, and they help students to navigate the engagement center itself. And of course, we utilize these students to help us with social media. There's just nothing that 20-year-olds despise more than 45-year-olds trying to connect with them on social media, right? So we use the peer mentors to help connect to the students through social media and get our message out to them in a way that they are willing to receive it. And then our faculty, of course. So the faculty within the division provide that window into the major. They have experience possibly in industry, or they have worked for a while in the field before coming to teach, or they have connections to folks who are doing that now. We know that our students respond well when faculty encouragement is provided. So if a faculty member encourages their class to come to a workshop or to go see a guest speaker, we know that the attendance at those events increases from that. If I say to my students, this is a really great speaker, I'm going to be there, you should come too, it increases the likelihood that they will appear at that event. So we do try to utilize our faculty to encourage the students to take advantage of these opportunities within the engagement center. And honestly, that's another place where the Canvas shell has become really, really helpful. The faculty can enroll in the Canvas shell as well because it's an open enrollment course. And so most of our faculty have enrolled themselves into their appropriate engagement center Canvas shell. So they get all the announcements, they get all the updates, they have access to all of that information so they can see everything that the students have access to in there. And they actually take time in their office hours to walk them through and show them how to access that kind of information. So the faculty is really critical to us in getting our information out to the students and encouraging them to utilize all of the resources that we have made available to them. Those are the members of the primary success team, but then of course the success team itself, like the success of these engagement centers, involves lots of other entities throughout the college. We have the need of the supports from academic support services, tutorial services, supplemental instruction. Those things we're starting to move into our engagement centers to be offered to students through the engagement centers before COVID happened. And so the idea was that a biology student would go to the STEM engagement center and could get tutoring in biology in the STEM engagement center. And that's sort of the direction that things were going. But not just those kinds of supports. In addition to those, all of these other sorts of supports, financial aid, EOP&S, admissions, etc., all of these should be accessible to the student. Information about them at least needs to be accessible to the student through the engagement center. So we can do that warm handoff to that other entity. So if a student has a question about financial aid, they don't have to know how to find the financial aid office. They can come to the engagement center and we can help them do that. We can walk them, if we're on campus, we can walk them to the financial aid office. In the virtual environment, we simply can put information about accessing financial aid staff into the modules within the Canvas shell so that the students can find that information when they need it. And so that's the beauty of that system. All of these larger campus supports can all be coordinated and organized as far as the student is concerned through that engagement center. So they know, I really have any kind of a question, I can just go into the engagement center and get help finding the answer. I won't necessarily find the answer in the engagement center, but I can get help. They will take me to where the answer exists.
Awesome.
So when we think about the work that's being done at the institution and the fact that our college is really working hard to have an equity focus on, you know, how we approach students, what happens in the classroom, just how we're serving them overall, right? The idea is we really want to change the student's experience. So the way that we're doing this, right, when you think about it, if you want to, thank you, the student success teams, right, it's a collaborative effort. I think it's fair to say that prior to guided pathways, there were pockets and spaces on campus where there was some collaboration between academic affairs and student services. But now more than ever, this is a real partnership, right? This is a true collaboration that has had to come about because we understand, right, that the student, it's the whole student that we're treating, right? We're using a holistic approach in wanting to make sure that everyone is supporting the student. There's a safety net that supports the student that consists of both faculty, staff, academic support, counseling, peer mentoring, right, et cetera. And in terms of that holistic wraparound support for students within the pathways, what we're discovering is that in providing students with a space where they can actually get all of this, where they can meet with their tutor, where they can meet with a peer mentor, where they are referred to, you know, the different resources on campus, where they can actually meet faculty and have exchanges with them that, you know, oftentimes they're too intimidated to go to their office hour. But when they're in the engagement center and there's this relaxed atmosphere where faculty are just kind of hanging out and talking to students, right, then those relationships are built, and it really makes a difference for the students. The other thing is, we recognized right from the get-go that we can't expect students to come and seek out the services. That doesn't work. And so having a dedicated space where students can actually go and get what they need is it's fundamental. The other piece is in terms of the holistic wraparound, right? Students coming into the engagement center often don't even know what they need, right? They're coming in, but they're not fully aware of everything that they need. And so when you have an ed advisor, again, who's making a connection with the students and who is sort of probing to find out how things are going, and what kinds of other, have you plugged into this particular office? Do you know where to go to get X, Y, and Z? So counseling, right? Instead of having the students go up to counseling, counseling is actually physically in the space throughout the week where students can come and they can also meet with the counselor, right? So the idea is that we wanted to create a space where students could be supported holistically. We in counseling, I need to say this because maybe some of you might be struggling with this on your own campuses. When we talk about where we're at today, I want you to know that it has been a process, right? This didn't just magically happen. And as a faculty member in counseling, I can tell you that our department resisted, right, a little bit of this idea that we were going to move from seeing any student, right, to a caseload model. But in looking at the research and in the more we dove into this work, the more we understood why guided pathways exists and the equity issue that's involved. I'm really proud of us in counseling because we've reached a point where we have, I think, in many ways led the effort to start, working with students in a different way, right? Changing that experience. And so the caseload management approach that we've embarked on, we haven't fully fleshed everything out. However, what we do have is we have designated counselors for each of the pathways. And so what that means is that when a student schedules an appointment, they can only schedule an appointment within their pathway with one of the counselors that's there. And so what we've seen happen is that, one, there's a lot of relationship building that's happening now more than ever, because students, once they connect with the counselor in their pathway, they are continuing to make appointments with that same individual, right? So there's continuity. The other really great thing is that counselors by pathway means that counselors can connect students to faculty, right, within those pathways. They can connect them to activities that are going on because there's this ongoing communication that happens within the pathway and everyone is involved, right? So this really helps to, I think it's really helping our students get through their journey, and it's helping students identify, right, with a connection and a program and a particular group of individuals that are very committed to their success.
And if I can just piggyback on what Patty has just said, as a faculty member who had knowledge of a few counselors that I had been on a committee with or I knew in some way, now that I have a particular set of counselors that are assigned to STEM, faculty are now referring students to a particular counselor. We know them better. We know them, we know what their strengths are, which areas they know the best. So it assists the faculty in sending the student to the counselor that's going to suit their needs. When I know the counselor, I know the student personality, and I can pair them up with the counselor within our division that maybe will make the best connection with that student. So I think that has been one of the most significant changes as a part of that success team, having the faculty in the division know the names of the counselors that serve their students has really changed that faculty counselor relationship in a profound way. that has great impact on the students. And that's what it's all about, right? And so that brings us into this conversation about keeping student equity at the forefront of everything that we're doing. And that brings us to, how did we do it? How are we doing it? And as Patty said, it's a process. We're still in the process. We are doing this as we're going. So it has changed significantly. These are some suggestions of how to make this work. This is not a limited list. This is just these are the big things that came to mind as we were thinking about it. Meet regularly with the success team and with time sufficient for the work. In the first year that we were embarking on this success team model, we didn't meet very often because every division was being challenged with trying to figure out who does what and how do we bring it together. So we met maybe once a month. And that worked great then. But then as we actually figured out what people were doing, we realized we were starting to go in different directions. And we wanted, each engagement center, each success team has its own flair, but we want to have a common experience for the students. So then we had to increase the frequency of the meetings. So that's going to be something that's going to adjust over time. Include all of the team members, and who's included on the team at a particular time can vary. So for example, we have meetings regularly between the center coordinators, just the center coordinators, and the other members of the success team aren't present, so that we can keep continuity between our centers. But then we each have meetings with our own success team so that we can design those outreach activities and implement them in things. Then we have these larger meetings where we have all of the deans, all of the ed advisors, all of the center coordinators come together. Not necessarily all the faculty and all the counselors, but those sort of core members of that success team come together on a regular basis. And so we're in flux about how frequently each of those kinds of meetings needs to take place, and each academic division sort of does their own meetings at their own pace. But knowing who needs to be in a particular meeting and knowing when you have to have that next level of conversation and include somebody else to move the conversation forward or to achieve that next goal is really important. Using data to develop, implement, and track our interventions. One of the beauties of Zoom is that usage report that you can print out. And when we were in person, we didn't have a good tracking mechanism to identify students who came to events. So a workshop or a speaker, some of the students would get checked in, some of them they wouldn't check themselves in as being there for the speaker, even though they would attend the speaker event or whatever. When we're doing stuff in Zoom, I can print out that usage report, and then I can just keep all of those usage reports and compare across them. I can see how many individual students came to one of our events over the whole course of the semester. I can watch a particular student and see how many things they attended. We can get all of these kinds of data. There's too much data to actually be able to utilize, but if we go in and look at it specifically, it's really, really helpful. Keeping equity at the center of all of our discussions and activities, trying to identify those groups of students who are falling through the cracks. Who are we missing? Who isn't showing up at these events? How do we get them checked in, dialed into these engagement centers? Who's the one at most risk? How can we go after these populations of students and help them to make that connection? And then reflect and evaluate the effectiveness of our student interventions. If we send out an email blast and it does not result in additional counselor appointments or more ed plans, that's not going to be the most effective way to get that information out. We need to go to something different and try a different approach in order to see that we get those results that we're looking for. And then this bottom right one, design and participate in relevant professional development. Having Patty as one of our engagement center coordinators and being the chair of our faculty development committee is such a valuable resource. We know that including faculty and into professional development opportunities where they see the benefits, the outcomes of these kinds of interventions, and this effort is so critical to getting their buy-in. And then they're that voice in the classroom. They're the one with that direct connection to the student. So that is a place where we are focusing. I wouldn't say we have figured that all out yet, but that is definitely, particularly with Patty's guidance, it's really become part of the forefront of our conversation as we move forward. How do we really bring that professional development up to the front of the line so that we can make sure that we're keeping the equity focus and getting these success teams to be as successful as possible? So now we have a group activity for you. We have a little breakout room activity for you. We're going to broadcast these prompts into your breakout rooms, but we'd like you to have a little conversation about what would the student success team look like on your campus. Who's going to be included? What's their role? Have we forgotten somebody that should be in ours? You know, somebody maybe on your campus that plays a big role in some way. We'd love to learn from you from that. And then what resources would you need in order to make this kind of a structure happen? So at this point, I'm going to stop sharing. I think we can go ahead and put you into the breakout rooms, and then we'll broadcast those questions into those rooms.
So I know in our group, we ran out of time. And so that typically happens often with breakout sessions. So we wanted to provide everyone with an opportunity to share. And so I don't know if there's anyone who'd like to go first and share what you discussed in your breakout. What are your takeaways?
I could say something.
Okay.
Okay. So I think I was in breakout room 2, and I'm from Victor Valley College, and we're in the process of setting up our student success teams right now. So I found this model to be very interesting, especially the fact that you have a physical space for it.
Yes.
I think that's so awesome. Tim's from Victor Valley too. So if we could find physical space for these engagement centers, oh, that's a wonderful idea. And the other thing that
Trish, in our breakout room, in our breakout room, I said you'd promise to give us space.
Oh, okay. You tell Dan that, okay?
Okay.
and then we also talked about, I was saying that on our student success teams, we plan to have someone from admissions and records and financial aid. But Patty was saying there's a financial aid person that floats between engagement centers, which I thought was a really great idea, because you're not going to need your financial aid person probably 100% of the time, but to have them be regularly there where students know they can come in and ask questions and get help and things like that, I think that's a really great use of a human resource. So that's all I was going to say.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to put Tim on the spot because I was in group 5 with Tim, also from Victor Valley, and he had a fantastic suggestion for another member of the success team.
Well, it wasn't my suggestion at all. Because we went to several meetings, and I remember a moment with a dean, another faculty member, a counselor, and I all virtually looked at each other as somebody said, the student support teams success teams have to have a librarian, and we all went, oh, okay. Well, yes, of course.
So we do have librarians that are dedicated to each academic pathway. We do have specialized librarians for that, but we don't really have them in those success team conversations. And at least this was sort of starting to happen as COVID happened. So they didn't spend time in the engagement centers prior. But that is, I think, a pretty interesting idea about having a little library time, a little librarian time within the engagement centers as well.
Yeah, agreed. Anyone else want to share?
Well, one of the big things that hit me is I'd been thinking far too narrowly about the size of the student success teams, because I was stuck up on that little thing where there's one faculty. We can't call it an advisor for some labyrinthine reason, but the one faculty facilitator and then one counselor, and then you open up eyes. They can have the number of counselors according to the size of the cohort.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a relief.
Okay, we have 5 minutes, and so what we thought we would do is just kind of walk you through as quick as we can regarding the lessons that we've learned thus far. So planning is good, right? I mean, I think we'd all agree. For some of us, it's not in our comfort zone. For others, we're planners. We love to plan, but having a plan is really important. So, you know, sitting down and carving out time to really think about what do you want this to look like, right? And making sure that you invite everyone to the table that to be there. That's also key. We learned that very early on. You know, we realized that there were some folks potentially that were missing from the conversation. And so, you know, we started bringing them in, and that's been really important. And I want to say, one of the voices that sometimes we often leave out, and those are our students, right? So we want to make sure that we are including students in the planning, because their voice matters. Oftentimes, the lens that we see things through, it's not the same way that the students coming in see things. And so it's really important to have that. So I know I jumped, but you also want to clearly define team member roles. This was, we knew this right from the get-go, that it was going to be extremely important to have clearly defined roles. And so what we did in counseling is we took the lead and actually developed a handout that we provided ed advisors and faculty with, right? We had meetings all together, and we went over what those roles were going to look like and who was going to do what. We're still fine-tuning all of that, right? But I think it was really important, at least from our perspective in counseling, for the advising piece, right? That we had clearly spelled out who could do, you know, like who was responsible for what, who was the most appropriate person for what have you. And then keeping that communication open, transparent, and constant is a struggle I think we would all, you know, agree with. And so again, this is something that we try to do, and we want to encourage you guys to do the same. We are still working on making communication continuous and open and transparent. The last thing I'll leave you with is this. We've had some transitions, let's just call it that, at our institution in terms of leadership over the last 4 years, which is when we embarked on this. And so having a lead administrator is key. Right now at our institution, each of the instructional deans, the academic deans, are responsible for each of the 5 divisions. If you can have a lead administrator that, you know, is responsible for leading this effort at you to do that. If you can identify one person, it kind of just creates cohesion, and it eliminates the siloed work that we are so notorious for, right? I think as community colleges, just because of the nature of how we're structured. So Ginger, is there anything you want to add?
No, I would say that is exactly, you know, it has morphed over time, it has evolved over time, and that is an uncomfortable place to be sometimes, but what we keep trying to come back to is that this is however difficult and however challenging it is on our end, we're trying to make it a smooth and easy process for students, and whatever we can do to make their experience as easy as possible. It doesn't matter what it looks like on our end. It's important what it looks like on their end. So if we have any questions, please let us know. I'm going to go ahead and put up our contact information. You're welcome to reach out to Patty or I. We're happy to communicate with you at any point on any of these. We're so grateful that you came and spent an hour with us today. Thank you so much for your time. Let us know if you do have any questions.